at a green light, the driver got distracted by a little pet shop that was right next to him. So there were these like cute little cats and dogs in the window, right? And he just ended up looking at that and was like basically ended up going backwards instead of forwards. And then once he realized, went full on the brakes, and we just heard this massive like doom sound of the whole camera crew ending up, like smashing through the wall basically.
Welcome to another edition of Relevant Insights, where we talk with entrepreneurs, hiring managers, and just plain cool people who have designed amazing careers for themselves. Today we have Aylin Nazlican on, and she is actually currently in Istanbul, which is awesome. And we're going to learn all about her journey, what she's done. And her and I actually work together at mmhmm. She's been with mmhmm for just a few short months, but she's doing an amazing job. And we're going to learn all about her journey. So welcome to the Relevant Insights podcast. We hope that you get some interesting, relevant insights out of our discussion today. So welcome, Aylin. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Troy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, the cool thing that I love when I talk with you, Aylin, is I never know where you're going to be. So why don't you tell us, what does your life look like from a location standpoint as far as where you live and work and all of that? Because you do that in a lot of areas.
Yeah, I'm kind of a bit all over the place. And I can certainly share a lot of top tips on how to live off your suitcase or from your suitcase for a long time, because I've been doing that for quite a while. So yeah, as you said, I'm in Istanbul at the moment. I'm going to be spending a month or two here, I think. Basically just because I wanted to. And, my partner lives here. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to come over, enjoy a bit of sun, because in London, where I usually officially live, summer is over. It's really rainy. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to flee the country and go and enjoy the sun a bit. And yeah, and then after Istanbul, I'm actually going to go to Germany, to my hometown as well, to see my family for a bit. And then probably going to be back in London at some point in November. So
very cool. And I guess in Germany, you live in a small town, right? So it's not big city situation in Germany. What was that like growing up in small town Germany?
Yeah, you might think that's exactly why I'm now kind of always in the big cities. Because so I grew up in a tiny town near Düsseldorf, actually. So in the west of the country. And it was pretty much really just, fields and farms and, one or two cafes and bars. And that was pretty much it. So that's where I was, born and raised. So my family, who's originally from Turkey, had moved to Germany in the 70s. So as you might know, there was like a big, group of Turkish people moving to Germany in the 70s. So my grandparents did the same. And then, I ended up being born there. Pretty much lived that, little village life for quite a while, was born in the same place, went to school in the same place. And I think that's when I realized, I feel like people are either exactly that because they feel comfortable with what they, experienced growing up. So either they stick to it and stay in like a small town their whole life, or it kind of turns into the complete opposite, which happened to me because everyone was also just always making fun of me growing up. They always said, "You're a big city girl. I don't know what you're doing here." So,
oh, really?
Yeah, I always kind of felt a bit displaced there. So, so I then ended up, studying in Cologne, which was like the first kind of step towards like a bigger place, but obviously not too far away from home. So I kind of had that comfort of, still seeing my family and not being too far away. But then I think I just realized that just, wasn't enough. So I was like, you know what, the next big thing is going to be, I'm just going to move to London and see how the actual big city life looks like. So, yeah.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. London is kind of a big move. Now you speak English fluently. I would assume you speak German fluently and probably Turkish fluently. Like, how did you learn English? I'm curious. Like, if you grew up in Germany, like, how did you get so fluent in English?
I think I guess it was mainly my own interest. I have a feeling that's what I'd like to say, because I mean, they do teach English at school, obviously, but you might know this. I guess you guys probably learned in like another language at school. It's not necessarily.
Yeah, we quote unquote learned. Yeah, but we can't speak it really. Yeah.
Exactly. It's kind of a bit of an alibi thing, where they're like, oh, we have Spanish on our curriculum, but no one actually kind of picks it up. So that's how it started. But then I realized I was always, just really interested in international things, or like, Western pop culture, like American or English, TV programs or films, music, that sort of stuff. So I think it was kind of mainly just me trying to adapt to that international feeling a bit more. So I kind of always ended up, watching TV shows in English rather than German or Turkish, or, I don't know, reading books in their original language if it was English, for instance. So that's kind of, I think, the best way to actually pick it up. And I think like the one thing that is important for that is actually to have an interest, because I feel like once people just end up forcing themselves to do something, what's the point? I feel like that's not going to lead to anything.
Right.
So yeah, so I think I just always had that interest.
That's so interesting to me because, I speak Korean, but I would struggle to watch like a sitcom or a series in Korean. You know what I mean? It seems like there's a huge step function going from book language to actual conversational, witty, fun language that you find in movies and sitcoms and stuff like that, which makes sense if you had an intense interest in that you kind of were able to pick not just the language up, but the culture that goes with it, right? There's so much culture entwined with language that makes sense. But I'm always amazed at people like you that can watch these things in not your native tongue, but then you kind of absorb it almost as though you're growing up in that culture in a way, and you get fluent, because I would never suspect you as English as a second language, So yeah, that's quite stunning. That's amazing. I know that Nadia and Fyodor, do you guys watch English? I know now you do, but did you back in the day watch a lot of kind of US language
I
stuff?
actually watched a lot of TV shows and movies because it was also, a part of my education program. I mean, my English teacher, he always suggest me to do it. And it really helped me just to pick up all this, this specific way how people talk with each other. And when I came to the US, I felt like local already, because there were so many.
Like you weren't lost.
Yes.
Right? Very interesting.
With me, when I think since I was 1 year old, my dad loves music. And so he's a musician, and he would always listen to this, 70s rock, like Beatles, Rolling Stones, Jethro Tull, and all of that. And I would just listen and sing these songs, this was the music that I was exposed to. It was all in English. So I think that was an early start for me before I even understood what was happening. But I was singing the songs without knowing what it means, and kind of slowly it made sense to me. I was really interested. Or Jesus Christ Superstar, this rock opera, and he would just sit me and kind of translate the whole thing all alone, more than an hour. He would just tell me what they're singing, and because they were repeating the words in choruses.
You totally get it, right? Music is so good for retention, I think.
Totally.
That's good stuff. Now, one thing that I have to make up for that I didn't do in the beginning that I wanted to do is a cool move that I did for you, Aylin, specifically. I showed it to you earlier, but I forgot to do it. So here it is. Hey, Aylin.
Wow.
So sorry about not doing that at the beginning, but that was something that I wanted to do for you. And I always try to figure out how to use better. And that was kind of a cool trick I learned from our CEO in our all hands. He did something like that. And I was like, oh, wow, how did he do that? So that's always fun to do.
Right. Can you imagine doing it something something unexpected message Aylin, you're embarrassing yourself.
Or something like, Aylin, you have something stuck in your teeth. Please fix that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, hey, fix your hair. Whatever. So Aylin, you are working as I don't know your exact title, PR manager, senior PR manager. I have no idea, but you're a PR guru is what I'll call it. At mmhmm. Why don't you walk us through kind of what you were doing before what led you to and then I want to delve into the interview process for and kind of understand that, because we have so many people that are interested in how to interview better and how to present themselves in a positive light when it comes to finding jobs. So what did you do before mmhmm, and what led you to us?
Yeah, so I actually have a full agency background. I've been in the industry for almost exactly 4 years now, since I finished my master's in London, and I've always ever been in agencies in the meantime. So, quite like big names like, Weber Shandwick, Hill Knowlton, those guys. So
And
I
that's intense work, right? Like that's good way to learn just the industry, because it's so voluminous,
yeah.
right? You're doing a lot.
No, absolutely. It's incredibly, they always call it fast paced, which just means you're going to be working a lot. It's a lot to take in, but I think it's quite a good thing to do early on in your career, I think, because you get quite a thick skin as well. Because once you start that, and if it's really early on in your career, you're kind of like, oh, this is a lot, but I'm kind of just going to get used to it. Because I feel like if you just end up getting thrown into things, you have to adapt. And then you, at some point, just, have to, just automatically figure out how to do things. So that's how I kind of started. And it was actually funny because like my first job, one of my main roles my main clients was actually a really big oil company. So it was pretty much on the B2B, like a really heavy B2B side of the PR world, which was quite different to what I'm doing now. But I think especially working with a really large corporation that's like all over the world was really good for me as well. Because as I said, I do really like, being globally connected and working with loads of people all over the world. So I got the chance to, work with different teams all over the world really early on in my career. So just, got thrown into it and immediately kind of started, managing other local teams in other countries, like, in Russia or in Turkey or like everywhere, basically. So that's kind of what I did for quite a while. And then kind of ended up, like going from one agency to the other for a bit just to kind of suss things out. And I had loads of other clients at that time as well. So that was anything from, fintech to, other consumer goods, or like HR tech was quite a big one as well. So obviously like really different to what I was doing before early on in my career. So I think that's one thing that was really beneficial for me, is to kind of, like work at really different things really early on, because that's then also obviously how you actually realize what you enjoy doing. Because if you're only ever stuck in one kind of niche or one industry, you're never going to be able to kind of compare it to anything, or actually tell yourself, oh, this is actually what I want to be doing. I really enjoy this and I'm good at it. So I was really lucky to kind of end up having clients and like all over the place. And that helped me a lot to kind of see what type of work I actually really enjoyed doing and what I didn't enjoy that much. So that was kind of then that I realized that I actually probably would prefer working in-house rather than in an agency, because, in an agency, it sometimes feels a bit like you're kind of like spread all over the place and you're trying to focus on like 10 different projects at once, and everyone is just kind of, giving you deadlines and you're trying to sort everything out. And I was a bit like, okay, how am I supposed to like develop the best work if I'm kind of trying to, sort out 5 other things at the same time? I mean, I know a lot of people really enjoy that about the agency life, but I kind of just realized it wasn't something that I wanted to do for a really long time. So when I then saw that it was actually hiring or wanted to hire a PR manager for EMEA as well, which was kind of the region that I had been looking after for other clients for quite a while, and I'm lucky enough to speak 2 of the languages, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to give it a go. And I wasn't expecting much of it, but I was a bit like, okay, I actually kind of really want to get an interview with this company, because I got hooked. So just tried it out. And then pretty early on, I got an email back that they would love to meet me. So that's kind of how that process started for me.
Awesome. That is such a cool story. And one of the things that I really take out of that, and I think I have a very similar beginning in very different genre of work, but I started out as a venture capitalist. So I actually started a venture capital fund, ran it for 3 years with some partners out of San Diego. And this was after my MBA, but the really cool thing that I loved about it is exactly what you were saying. It gave me the opportunity to see a wide breadth of different companies, different management teams, see what works, what doesn't work. And I was able from that to really discover what my calling was and what I was good at and interested in, etc. So I think early in your career, if you can pull it off to get kind of a job that gives you a broad kind of exposure to a bunch of different types of work or whatever in a certain genre is very helpful to figuring out what you want to do and what you want to be excellent at, right? So that's really cool that you had that opportunity.
Yeah, I have this little reference. Nassim Taleb, one of the main philosophers of our time and of like the tech world, he has this concept and actually a book that is called Skin in the Game. Skin in the Game, where it's a thick book, and the whole point of the book is that you need to have skin in the game in order to get necessary skills and to be successful and to be relevant in the modern world. It's all about actually learning by doing, and again,
yeah, do things. Oh wait,
yeah.
I have something for that for you to back you up on that. There we go. I'll throw up my do things. Hashtag do things slide.
Yeah.
No, that's absolutely right. That's a cool philosophy, and yeah, having skin in the game is so important. And I think a lot of people end up not having skin in the game and go for too long in roles or circumstances that don't match either their talents or their interests, and they kind of get stuck in a way. And I think that is what we're trying to do at Relevant, is help people get unstuck and really discover how to do things, number one, and how to figure out what their calling is and how they want to design their life and their career going forward. So really give them that opportunity to rethink what they're doing based on all the inputs they're getting. So yeah, that's really good stuff.
I have a question. Can you name, what do you think, your 3 superpowers that sold you to like, what do you think, what did they think was awesome about you that made it work?
Okay. Oh God. I think some of these are going to sound incredibly cliche, so bear with me. I would always say the first one for me in life in general, not just for interviews, but generally, authenticity is just so important, because I mean, you have the same in personal relationships.
Amen.
As well, right?
That's so true. Yeah.
Yeah, because people can see through it. That's the issue. Like, you can try and pretend to be someone else or be really good at something, or sell yourself as this persona, only to a certain extent, because at some point, like, people are going to kind of get that energy from you. They're going to be a bit like, okay, cool, this sounds good on paper, but is that actually the actual person talking to me right now? So I would always say, like, don't try to be someone that you're not, because, and I think, like, Rosie actually brought that up when she was your guest as well, is that, like, you're going to end up working with those people, right? They're going to, like, spend a lot of time with you, either virtually or even in person when you end up meeting them. And at some point, they're going to realize, oh, this is kind of not the person I thought she was. So there's really no point. So the one thing is, focus on who you are, what you want to do, and what you're actually good at, and try to sell that. So number 1, authenticity for sure. And then number 2, I mean, I guess in my case, okay, this like sounds a bit like, I don't want to limit anyone, but I think generally, if you want to work in an international team, I would want to say languages, but that's kind of a bit limiting. So I would say having like that cultural sensitivity as well, because I know some people, just character-wise, it doesn't matter where you grew up or where you actually live. It's also just about how you kind of, interact with people from different cultures, how much you actually try to learn from them, from their culture as well. And I think that honestly is like such a make or break thing for someone just as a character as well. So I would always say, like, sucking everything in that you can and just be like, okay, I want to learn as much from like everyone I meet in my life from all over the world as I can. That's a really, really big thing. So I think number 2 just would be, I mean, I guess if you'd want to call it some cultural sensitivity, then that would be it probably. I guess, well, you could say being open-minded is probably kind of also what I'm trying to say with this. So I think you can kind of put that in one box, I guess. So that would be number 2. And then number 3 was probably kind of my career development so far. I know it was quite short, because obviously I had been in the industry for less than 4 years at that point. But as I said before, I think if you, like, if people try to, do as many things and different things as they can really early on in their career, it can only bring them forward. Like, even if that's kind of, I'm just thinking, like the first agency I was working in was like a massive global agency, and we were on, like, even just the London office was 300 people, right? So I kind of always tried to be the person to, run around and try to speak to other teams and, like, maybe even, like, speak to the production team and make friends with them and find out how, the video shoots go that they do, or that sort of stuff. Or even, just step up if another team needs help to do some work that you'd never done before. I think that's always a really good way to kind of just, pick up as many things as you can and learn as much as you can in a short period of time. So yeah, just making the most of your resources, really, and making sure that you kind of then have a large variety of things that you can show to people and be like, this is all the stuff that I've done in my life so far. So that would be number 3, probably.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I think that it is really great that you had the experience, like trying to work with different projects. I also used to work in an agency as well, and I can relate how you can, manage all this project, different clients at the same time. And I feel like it gives you this like super skill as multitasking as well. But my question is, so how to find like your superpower? How did you find your superpower, and how to end up with like a project that you like? So from your perspective, how was that?
Well, I mean, most of it, I think it's a lot of just, people trying to figure out things themselves. So most of it is actually just going to happen from your side. You're just going to, like, at some point, you're basically forced to realize, okay, this is what I'm good at. This is what I'm probably not so good at. And then what I'd also always say is really helpful is just talking to people a lot. I mean, as you can probably tell, I do like to talk. I just love to talk to people everywhere, and just
we like listening to you, so that's good.
Thank you. You're too kind. Thanks. So honestly, I would say, like, talk to as many people as you can. This might sound really irrelevant at this point, but obviously, like, within conversation, especially if it's like colleagues of yours or like a mentor or someone that you really trust, at some point they're going to kind of reflect on that as well, right? So you're able to kind of get feedback from them, or, like people coming up to you and saying, you know what, I've kind of seen you do this. You might not be aware of it, but you're actually really good at it. Maybe this is something you should pursue. So, honestly, rather than only trying to figure things out by yourself, which is obviously really important, it's also so important to honestly just like talk to the people around you, get their advice on things, just get their honest thoughts and feedback, and see what they say. Because in the end, sometimes there's things that you don't see, but other people pick up on. And it's always quite helpful to have that self-awareness from a different standpoint.
It's kind of hashtag curiosity to me also,
Yeah.
Curiosity is a lot of it, like this genuine curiosity about your performance, what people are doing, their trajectories, like the way things work, and best practices and bad practices, etc. And just like loving to learn and understand things. I think this is such a maybe undervalued quality, but that everyone kind of loves, actually.
Yeah. No, what those were great superpowers. Thanks for walking us through those, Aylin. What struck curiosity hit me as well, Fyodor, but I'm thinking it was cultural curiosity. I think is a big deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like truly being curious and wanting to learn about other people's cultures. That has served me really well. And I've seen other people in my career that do that. And even if you don't speak the language, it transcends that. And it kind of like makes a bond with people, whether you're doing a partnership, client work for someone over there, whatever it may be. I see that that's important. And then the other thing that struck me, Aylin, about what you were saying, the last part is you can tell with us, part of our mantra at Relevant is #do-things. And the reason that we have this #do-things is because as I've gone through my career, and Fyodor as well, we've noticed that the people that attain the most success in life and their careers are people that don't just look good on the resume, because those are dime a dozen. Like, they're, especially in Asia, I know there are so many people that look amazing on their resumes, but they really haven't done anything of note. And I think that's an important thing that I look for when I'm hiring people. And I think you kind of articulated that perfectly. You got to do things.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. I have another question. Suppose we understood our own superpowers as a professional, asked around, listen to ourselves, with a beautiful combination. As a like marketing PR professional, what advice can you give actually people that have to market themselves? And what do you think they are missing? And what, being a professional in this area, what do you think are people missing? And what can they, use to let the word out about their superpowers?
Yeah, no, I think this is actually a bit of a funny one. This sounds like a paradox a bit, because as a PR person, you're basically the person who's never in the spotlight. You push other people into the spotlight because you're always behind the camera,
Right.
basically. But obviously, still, you need to be good at PRing yourself as well. Otherwise, what's the point? Well, I mean, I think there's a really fine line because, okay, it's really tricky because you can tell when people try a bit too hard, right? There's a really fine line between kind of trying to convince people that you're great and sounding a bit arrogant versus kind of like talking yourself down and being a bit too humble with things. So that is a bit of a tricky thing that people just need to find that fine line between those two things, which can seem a bit tricky. But I think that also leads back to what I said about authenticity and being yourself. Is I feel like once you're at a point where you're like, you know what, I'm just going to go into this and I'm going to show myself as I am. Technically that's the best PR of yourself that you can do, right? Because most people are actually really, really interesting as characters. So how about you just show that and show people who you actually are? Because especially in PR, you need to be quite good at building relationships with people, right? So if you're kind of always that person who tries to hide themselves or kind of seems a bit either detached or a bit I actually don't want to be talking to you right now, people are going to pick up on that, right? And I think the same thing kind of applies to job interviews as well, because in the end, that's also a way of trying to build a relationship with someone. You're trying to get the person you're talking to like you and to then hire you, right? So it's kind of about those little things of, being yourself, but also making sure you're not trying to oversell yourself to the person, which again, people do pick up on. People can tell when you're trying to do that. So it's kind of honestly just about finding that balance between how do I actually PR myself really well and show what I'm worth and what I can do without kind of making the other person feel like, what's this person talking about? Why is she listing all of those things? It's also a bit about, just reading the room. Everyone is different. I talked to so many people at mmhmm before I actually got the job offer, right? I met a lot of people and each of those people were different, right? But it's still kind of just about, picking up on their vibe, but also making sure you're kind of still yourself, because every person is different. Every relationship with any professional or any colleague is different. So it's kind of honestly just trying to, find that middle ground for it.
Yeah, that is a challenge.
Yeah, my little hint, I think, and discovery is that whenever you make the conclusion for the people, they need to do something. So if you tell them, I'm great, their job will be to say, let's see, maybe you're not. And let me find, the reasons why you're not, because they need to do something. But when you say, oh, I did this and this and this and this, and then the people, their job is to say, wow, you're great. And you're like, well, thank you,
No, that is a great observation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let them
not making the conclusion to people. Yeah, but kind of leading them to the conclusion that they make on their own. That's maybe the little trick.
No, absolutely. And it's also about, kind of still seeming a bit humble, but kind of, hinting things at people, being a bit throwing something in there oh, and I've achieved this as well, by the way. And as you said, people pick up on that stuff. So maybe the person you're talking to is then going to turn around and be like, oh, wait a second, that sounds really interesting. How have you done that? And then you actually have a chance to, without looking arrogant, just explain what you've actually achieved and how great it was. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Those are great observations. I love it. I'm curious, when you interviewed, particularly with Rosie, who was the hiring manager, What was that like, right? Like, what was that conversation like? Do you think that you discovered some of Rosie's pain that she had that she needed to solve for by this role? Or like, what were you discovering when you were talking with Rosie in your conversations? I would assume it was a back and forth, right?
Oh yeah, it was pretty much a really nice, it was a great chat that we had. And I think, again, that was something like you could tell immediately that both of us didn't try to portray ourselves as someone that we weren't. And I think that's why we
Yeah.
immediately clicked as well, because it was just a really open and honest conversation that we were having. And she was obviously telling me about, her challenges and saying, well, I need more people on my team because actually is actually like really, really growing right now. It's becoming a really big thing. So we need to have a really solid, trustworthy team around us to kind of move that forward. So she was really transparent about like the things that she actually needed from another person to join the team, and like her pain points, and how I potentially could help her fix those. And then I think I was just really lucky enough to kind of like be able to offer all those things that she was kind of like missing on her one-woman team, basically.
Right.
Obviously, at some point you don't have time anymore to like do all those things, right? I mean, she's looking after the whole EMEA regions. That is a lot. So yeah, we were just really open and honest about that. And then she obviously, Rosie has an agency background as well. So we talked about that a lot. So she obviously also understood where I was coming from, the way I was working before and all those processes and how, process heavy it can be and how challenging it can be as well. So we talked quite a bit about that. And then I think in the end, she was also just quite happy to, have someone on the chat who had the same background as her. So we also kind of knew like, we would kind of immediately, even before working together, had an idea of how it would be to work with each other. So I think that kind of gave her the reassurance of, I think this person gets me. So we have a really similar background. So I think it's going to be really good collaboration. And then, other than that, we just had like a really, really nice chat. And she obviously asked me a lot about what I thought of and how we could, potentially PR the company, and what like the strategic approaches and the tactics would be that I would kind of suggest. And then that's also like a really important thing that I think she brought up as well, is like doing your preparation and like making sure you actually know who you're talking to, because otherwise that's a complete deal breaker. So I just made sure that I actually knew who I was talking to and what the company tried to achieve. So that obviously gave me a really good basis to then come up with some PR ideas and be like, listen, I think this is a great opportunity to do X, Y, Z. And I think she quite liked it, and she thought that's definitely stuff we can look into. So yeah, here I am.
Yeah, very good. I that's exactly right. You need to know who you're interviewing with, what they are all about, because interviewing with Rosie is going to be much different than interviewing with someone from the technical team, for instance. Like they're going to have different considerations, thoughts, etc. So I think that's a good point of advice in interviewing with multiple people, is make sure you understand who you're interviewing with and prepare for that conversation appropriately. Yeah, I think that's a great tactic for interviewing. So yeah, that's very good.
And it's also great to have this like plan in your mind, right? Like what steps I want to offer them. Like as you mentioned that you offered like some strategic view on their development, and also to make some research about what company want to achieve.
Yeah, it's homework. Absolutely. You got to do your homework, right?
Definitely. Which obviously still doesn't need, I think people should still, I feel like sometimes people make the mistake of writing down a list and then just reading it off. Right? Because they're like, I want to touch on all of those things.
Bullet points.
Yeah, exactly. I think people need to like obviously prepare well, do their homework, as you said, but then also give themselves enough kind of space or headspace to also have room to, talk about things a bit more, or maybe, remember something during the conversation that they think might be really relevant. And then like, starting to talk about that and like drifting off of the original conversation a bit to bring something else forward. So I think it's still important to like give yourself that space to be able to have like a flexible, nice conversation rather than just reading things off, because that can put people off quite quickly.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. And that's one thing that I saw a lot in Asia was the bulletproof syndrome, the bullet list syndrome, where I felt like I was talking with more like Siri, like a robot, like an AI, as opposed to a human,
Yeah.
right? So being human and authentic, like you're talking about, like knowing your stuff, but knowing what to say and what not to say, right? You don't have to say it all. Is really, really important. Yeah, that's good stuff. Any other questions, Nadia and Fyodor? I have one. Well, actually, two last questions. I have our traditional crazy question at the end, but I have one before that. Any other from you and Fyodor, you and Nadia?
Go ahead.
I mean, I have 100, but I think you should go.
Well, one that I'm thinking that is just striking me as we're talking with you, Aylin, is that you're earlier in your career, but you've already designed a pretty epic career path, and you're living the dream right now, right? Like, it's kind of like you go through university, you get your master's degree, and you kind of wonder what will be. And now here you are living essentially dispersed between 3 different countries, working for a pretty amazing company that is now, everyone is working virtually. So it supports your kind of lifestyle. I guess if you were to look inwardly at your life right now, like, what would you change, if anything? Like, what are the things that you're thinking, like, next I want to kind of accomplish this on the personal front or the career front, or like, what do you see as kind of like a next step for Aylin?
Oh, good question. I mean, I do have to say, I'm actually, I think, really happy and lucky where I am right now. Because as you said, I have the chance to be all over the place. If I wanted to travel to a whole other country, like on the other side of the world, I could just do that and take my laptop with me. So I'm really lucky to, be working in a company where that's actually possible. So you can, like, you have the chance to, design your life the way you want it to be. So it's kind of mainly about you as a person. And then, you design your everyday life the way you want, but then you can still do the job that you love, right? So I think that is really pretty ideal. So I consider myself really lucky for that. And then, in terms of next steps, I guess I definitely want to continue making the most of the situation. I definitely want to go to places that I've never been to, because I haven't actually, I've been in that triangle of 3 countries a lot, but there are so many countries that I've never even been close to. So I think I'm going to take this opportunity and maybe go somewhere completely different. And maybe I even get a chance to, come over to you, Troy, and say hi, or like meet one of our team from like Tokyo, or, just like
to us in New York, Aylin, too, please now.
Include that in our
short list.
Yeah,
you got to get to New York. Yeah,
Exactly.
you're exactly right, Aylin. Like, right now, I think we are very lucky to have this unique opportunity where we can work from literally anywhere. Actually, I don't know if you know this, but someone on our team actually won a contest with United Airlines, and she gets 2 first-class tickets for a year to anywhere that United flies. She can just jet set wherever she wants to go. She's already been doing that. And it isn't an issue with working at mmhmm. Like, it's just, she just takes, like you said, takes her laptop, does her job from wherever she is in the world. And I think that that's a very burgeoning and new opportunity that has just become available to millions upon millions of employees. And now the idea is, how do you grab that for yourself? How do you find those cool companies that will allow you to do it, right? So yeah, you're kind of living the dream, and I love that goal that you just articulated of, like, get out of that trifecta of kind of so familiar with and see what Tokyo's like and other places right around the world. And I can tell you, I can tell that you have cultural curiosity, so it's just going to be fun and exciting, and you'll learn a lot by doing that. So that's really, really a cool goal.
Yeah.
I have a short comment. I'm so happy with your answer, and I think it's such a change of perspective, because usually, like, the narrative that we have is that, like, whenever you get something, you immediately have to wish for something else and, like, run to something better and always be kind of, but how cool is it that we can just say now, like, more and more, I hope, that I'm really happy where I am,
Life
and I
is
just
good.
want to make
Yeah.
the most of it. That's it. Like, this is great. There's like,
No,
I'm just
100%.
living. Yeah.
No, and I think that the point is, I feel like I just realized this answering the question now. I think I haven't fully grasped what this means for me yet. Because,
Yeah.
I mean, I've been
Yeah.
around for a couple of months and it's been amazing. But then you start realizing, wait a damn minute, I can go wherever I want. And this is amazing, right? So it takes
Yeah.
some time for you to realize, actually, I am living the dream and I need to make the most of this right now. So, yeah, I mean,
That's
you could
so
say
true.
it's kind of a bit of the situation I'm in right now, but trying to get to that next step of actually making the most of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool. No, that's great. And you're absolutely right. And I just think it's time to be thankful, for kind of the situations that we have and that we're able to create in our lives. And I think so many more people across the globe have the opportunity to create similar situations. Whereas a few short years ago, before COVID and all this stuff went down, which was so highly negative for the globe, I think the big positive coming out of this is that there's more flexibility in people's lives to live their best life and work their best work, from wherever they are, which I think is really a great opportunity for a lot of people. So yeah, that's cool. We just have to say it out loud to recognize it, right?
Absolutely.
Well,
we need to
let me
remind
ask
ourselves.
What's that?
No, we need to constantly remind ourselves of that to make sure that we're making the most of it. So yeah.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So now for my last question, which we ask everyone, just because we talk with so many interesting people that have had great experiences across different careers, what is the craziest thing that's ever happened to you in your career? And especially since you worked at an agency, I'm sure that there were probably some interesting things that happened in the agency life. But what's the most crazy thing that's ever happened to you in your career?
Right. I think, okay, so there was, so basically, the big corporation that I was working for, they were actually, a partner of one of the Formula One teams. So we ended up doing a video shoot in the south of France with some of the Formula One drivers from that team. So first of all, I mean, that was amazing.
Cool.
Really early on in my career, and I was like, oh, I'm living that glamorous PR life, So we went there, we did the shoot, and basically the shoot involved one of the Formula One drivers driving a van through the town, right, that we were in. And what happened basically is the van had the whole camera crew in the back, and the Formula One driver was driving it. And then what basically happened is, at a green light, the driver got distracted by a little pet shop that was right next to him. So there were these like cute little cats and dogs in the window, right? And he just ended up looking at that and was like, basically ended up going backwards instead of forwards. And then once he realized, went full on the brakes, and we just heard this massive like doom sound of the whole camera crew ending up, like smashing through the wall, basically.
Oh my gosh.
I think he really dodged a bullet there. No one was harmed, just so you know. Everyone was
but equipment may have gotten broken, right? Like
yeah.
That was my question. Did everyone survive?
No, everyone is fine. Trust me, they're all alive, so all good. But it was also just hilarious because it's funny because it's a Formula One driver, right?
Yeah, like out of all the drivers, like you would think that like, this is the guy you can trust.
Exactly. Oh
That's what happens when people see, kittens and puppies. Like, you just get distracted and then you make mistakes. So they're just human. But yeah, that was hilarious. Quite fun.
What I call whenever that happens, like I tow a trailer for some of the stuff we do personally, and we try to put everything in the trailer secure. But like if I go over big bumps, I always talk about like scrambled eggs. Like the trailer's going to be scrambled eggs, and in this case, sounds like the camera crew was scrambled.
Like, basically, yeah. We were also quite lucky that the equipment wasn't actually damaged, which I think is quite a big miracle.
That's expensive equipment. Yeah.
Yeah. So everyone was safe. The team and the equipment all came out of it really safely. So we can laugh about it now.
Well, that's good. Thank you for sharing. And thank you for just spending the time with us today. It was really amazing to learn just about your career, where you've been, where you're going. And also, I think a key thing for all of us that are on this podcast right now is just to be thankful for where you're at and take part in the journey. I think so often I've seen in my career, and I've been guilty of this, is you're always looking at the next thing, like you were saying, Fyodor, but not appreciating the view of where you're at, you know, and the journey that's involved of progress in your life, in your career, and all of that. So I'm taking that away from today's conversation with you, Aylin. And I just want to, on behalf of all of us here at Relevant, thank you for coming on and sharing everything with us today. And I'm sure that our listeners will love watching this this podcast of you. So thank you, Aylin, for coming on.
Hopefully. Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is our symbol for relevant, the V. So stay relevant. And Aylin, thank you so much for coming on board, and we'll talk with you soon, okay?
Thanks so much, guys.
Thank
Bye.
you.
That's so great.